Hey guys, I'm back today to talk to you about my HSG experience. So I was a little bit nervous going into this, the HSG test. And if you're not familiar with the HSG test, it stands for Hysterosalpingogram, which the actual test is an X-ray procedure where they insert dye into your uterus through your vagina, and then the X-ray will pick up where that dye is in your body. So by inserting it through your vagina and into your uterus, it will fall out of your fallopian tubes in theory if there's no blockages, and in that way your doctor can just be reassured that there's nothing blocking the way of the egg coming down or the sperm going up. So that is what this test is for. So the internet was full of horror stories about the HSG, so I was a little bit nervous, but I had to do it, so I just did it. My nurse told me to take 2 Advil or ibuprofen before I went into the procedure, just to kind of reduce the effects of cramping that I might feel throughout the procedure. So I did that. I went up to, I had like an hour-and-a-half drive to the procedure location because my home office doesn't do the test, only the main office of this fertility group does that. So I took my mom with me. They said that they recommended someone be available to drive you home in the event that you're cramping very badly. So my mom tagged along. She was excited. And nervous for me too, obviously, but she was excited to finally get the chance to kind of participate in what I'd been going through. So I arrived at the location pretty early. By mistake, I had the wrong appointment time, I guess. I don't know. They told me I was a half an hour early. So me and my mom just sat around, chit-chatted, and waited until they called me back. So I went back for the procedure. It's just like getting your annual woman's exam. You're in the stirrups and everything's out there for the nurse and the tech to see. Actually, it's a nurse practitioner that did mine. She was so sweet. She was talking to me the whole time. Like, I didn't even realize that the test had started until she started mentioning that she was seeing something in my uterus. So, I mean, the speculum was uncomfortable, but it always is for me. So I didn't even realize that she had moved on to the next phase of the test until she looked at the screen, which I could also see, but I wasn't looking at it yet because I didn't realize anything was going on. She said she thought she saw something, so she had me cough a few times, and I guess just like that motion of coughing, like, kind of moves your whole core, and she thought that I might move something around. But that didn't work. So, and by this time I looked over at the screen and I could see where there was an area of the image that was colored differently from everything else. So I could kind of tell that there was something there. So she told me that she was going to take everything out and try again, to maybe dislodge whatever this was in that area of my uterus. And that made me really nervous. I was afraid that was really going to hurt if she was going to put a lot of pressure into my uterus to try and get this thing dislodged. So I just kind of braced myself and took a deep breath, made a prayer, and just hoped for the best, really. So she reinserted all of the dye. She asked me to cough a few more times, really hard, really forceful coughs, but it apparently didn't work. There was still quite a large blockage in my uterus, so she just kind of took everything out. She sat me up, and then we talked about my results. So after I was sitting up and the test itself was over, I was kind of relieved because I didn't feel any pain. And I was so nervous. I didn't even really feel any cramping. In fact, no cramping during the procedure itself. The only thing that was uncomfortable was the speculum, like I said. And, I just expect that when I go in for those sorts of exams. So she sat me up, the nurse practitioner did, and she showed me the images that the x-ray tech had taken during the procedure. And she showed me my right fallopian tube, which was clearly open. All the dye came out and spilled out. You could see it was like a big glob at the end of it. And then she showed me a different, I guess, angle or plane of my uterus, and you could see quite a relatively large mass in the upper left-hand corner of my uterus. And it looked big to me. She said, don't worry, everything's kind of distorted, but if you think of your uterus as about the size of a lemon, or like your fist, whatever the blockage was in my uterus is about the size of your thumb. So, I mean, relatively, if you think about it, it's a decent size, but not massive. So that thumb-sized blockage was blocking the upper left-hand area of my uterus, and it was also blocking the fallopian tube. So dye could not get past it and into my fallopian tube, and therefore out of my fallopian tube. So I definitely have a pretty serious blockage that needs to be removed, she said. She suspected that it was a polyp, because polyps are fairly normal. Polyps are like excess endometrial lining, so they're pretty common. So that's what she suspected that it was, without any additional information. So she said she was going to send the results of the HSG to my nurse. And unfortunately, my home doctor was out on vacation this week, so he wouldn't be able to review them. But she went ahead and sent everything to my nurse and suggested that I follow up with my nurse later in the afternoon to see what my next steps would be. The nurse practitioner who did the HSG suggested that they would probably have me do the SHG, which is the Hysterosalpingogram, I believe is what it's called. It's a saline, it's when they fill your uterus with saline and do a transvaginal ultrasound to get better views of like the shape and size and location of whatever might be in your uterus. So she said that's probably going to be my next step, but that I should check with my home office and my nurse to make sure. So I left there, dye is still kind of leaking out, as it would do, because it has nowhere else to go but down when you're walking around. So I left the doctor's office, and on my way back home, which is about an hour and a half drive back, probably about an hour later, I called my nurse. She didn't answer, but I left a message. And about half an hour after that, she called me back and said that she had an associate doctor go ahead and review my scans from the HSG, and he did suggest to do the sonogram, the saline infused sonogram. So luckily I was still within the time frame, the cycle day 5 to 12, in order to get that done this cycle. So I was praying that I would be able to, that they would have availability for me and that I could get it done. So they transferred me over to, my nurse transferred me over to the scheduling coordinator. And luckily I was able to get an appointment, but it was at yet another location, another satellite office of this fertility group, which, whatever, it's not a big deal. This one was only half an hour away, so that was good. But so I got an appointment there for 2 days later. So at this point, I'm just waiting to get the saline sonogram and to get better views of what this might be in my uterus. So I guess I'll be back in a few days and let you know how that went. Thanks for watching, and if you want to keep hearing updates about my journey through becoming a single mother, just go ahead and click subscribe down below. Feel free to leave me any comments or questions, and I'll try and get to them. Thanks. Bye, guys.